Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I presented in this conference about 5 years ago, and I talked a lot about drip irrigation, and the organizers of the conference asked me to come back again this year, and it worked out on my schedule that I was able to attend here today. And I was been thinking over the last month or so, what could I do, what could I share with you today that might be beneficial for you? And I thought I could talk a lot about drip irrigation and how I implemented that on my farm and the reduction in water that I've seen through those practices and those techniques. But I thought we've already talked about that, maybe to expand to what's next and what comes next. So today I really want to talk about just what I'm doing in agriculture here in Weber County locally and what I'm doing with the water that's been allocated to me. So like was said in the introduction, I grow about 170 acres of different types of produce. My main produce commodities are watermelons, cantaloupes, tomatoes, squash, and pumpkins. We're shipping all over the Utah and all over the region. And one of those things that I wanted to share with you today is just kind of that process of what it looks like on a daily basis of what I'm doing on my farm. So, let's see. There we go. So on our farm we have these structures that are called high tunnels, and we plant. That's the first thing we do in the beginning of every season in April, is we plant our high tunnels, and we typically plant tomatoes inside of our high tunnels. And these allow us to plant about 1 month earlier than a typical field tomato because they're protected from frost. So we're often in April where you'll find us out planting tomatoes in our high tunnels. We have about 1 acre of high tunnels. This is a picture of just some of my kids, and we involve them very much in what we're doing in our agriculture, planting those tomatoes. So once those tomatoes have been planted and we're moving on, we move into our field production. And we have lots of different types of fields that we're producing. This particular video I'm going to show you is a cantaloupe production. So we employ, I think to be successful in farming, you have to be up to date on technology. You have to be up to date on all the modern techniques to employ, to be economical, right? Farming's been around for ages. You know, it's one of the first professions we've had is growing our food. But to be economical today, we've had to really embrace modern technologies and practices. One of those things that we do is plastic culture. So if you look in this video, you'll see a black bed of plastic. And what we do is in the spring, when we've tilled our ground, we'll shape a bed with a bed shaping machine, and that will install a drip tape inside of that bed, which brings all the soil together, kind of compacts it into a nice area. And then we drape that black plastic over it, and it's I kind of think of it as like a comforter in bed. It just kind of helps keep all the heat in the soil. And then we'll go through with a machine like this, and we'll plant into that plastic. Okay, that's actually watermelon production right there. So that plant is pressed. That's a water wheel transplanter, and that plant's dropped into those holes, and there's drip tape. So we can, as soon as we move that tractor out of that field, I'll go turn the pump on and the filtration system and pressurize up my system, and then that plant gets watered in with that drip irrigation that's inside of that bed. So that bed creates a really warm environment for that plant, but also reduces the weed population, and really just creates an ideal growing environment for that plant. Also, we're able to fertigate inside of our irrigation systems to inject those nutrients that plant needs right at the right time, right at the right location. So we're embracing a lot of those modern techniques into our agricultural practices. This is just another view of that similar process. We employ a lot of junior high and high school kids on our farm. This is just another view of that process. This is planting bell peppers. I just always throw this in because that's a half-mile long row, and it gets really boring on that tractor. And I had plants like on my lap, and I'm holding them and trying to steer with my knees because we had plants everywhere because it took that many plants to plant, a half mile down, half mile back till we got more plants. So you got to be creative when you're farming because it gets kind of boring sometimes. This is another cool practice that we've implemented on our farm over the last few years. You remember I told you about the high tunnels that we have on our farm? Those are big greenhouse structures. This is the same principle but scaled down. This is called a low tunnel. So after we get done planting that plant, we have another machine that goes through that will bend the hoops, the wire hoops, and place them in the ground, and then we'll put a covering of perforated plastic over the top. So take a look at this video. So that's a little cantaloupe plant in that low tunnel. And it's about 20 to 30 degrees warmer in there than ambient air temperatures. So by doing that, we're able to get into the ground faster, typically before our last frost dates, and we're able to get to market quicker to ship these cantaloupes all over. This is just a picture after a rainstorm. You can see the plants have started to grow and start to fill in. Before we had plastic culture and drip irrigation, we would never see fields that look maybe as pretty as this field looks with such mature plants and uniformity. Now, if you remember that picture at the beginning of my kids planting those tomatoes in those high tunnels, this is a follow-up picture of me standing in those same high tunnels getting ready to harvest. And those plants have now filled up to about waist high. So it's really a remarkable place to be growing the plants. Now, I'm going to move on to harvest. This is a picture of me when I was much younger, selling watermelons on the side of the road. I had my dog there. Life was great. Notice on the sign I was selling them for 5 cents a pound. That's where we started. We've come a long ways. We no longer sell by the side of the road. And for my food safety guys out there, dogs aren't allowed on top of the pile of food. So we've come a long ways in our farming operation. We now ship semi-loads every single day all over the region. These are some beautiful tomatoes that we pick out of those high tunnels and we ship all over. We've had to custom create harvesting aids to help keep up with our labor costs. Labor cost is going up every single year for us. So we've had to become creative in how we're harvesting. So we've had this custom-made conveyor system where the workers can pick the product. In this picture, it's cantaloupe, set it on the conveyor, and it can be conveyed to the center and then inclined up onto the trailer. Before this, we would have buckets, and we'd hire lots and lots of kids that could come and haul bucket loads of cantaloupes and dump them into the trailers. This is a video of that process. We're harvesting cantaloupes 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. Same fields over and over again. That's the way cantaloupe produce. They produce in sets. But you can imagine that's a lot easier than hauling buckets. And this is how we harvest our watermelons. You might have seen these in the stores. We're one of the largest growers of the black diamond watermelons here locally. That's just a dark rind, almost a black rind watermelon. Lots of manual labor involved. So you can see the black plastic beds in there. You can see the field's pretty much filled in with lots of vine. Plants look really healthy. That's all due to those modern practices that I can implement, that fertigation, getting the nutrients right on the plant right at the right time. And then my favorite time of year is fall. If I can farm in a hoodie, life is amazing. So fall is my favorite time of year. We are so busy in fall. We ship 5 to 6 semi-loads of product out every single day, starting the 1st of September all the way up to Halloween. And I love all the different colors that you'll see in our fall harvest. This is me starting some of my kids young on our wash line. We wash a lot of our products so they become more appealing to the end user. These are just mini pumpkins. That wash line goes every day for 2 months straight. We also have a wax line that will shine up those mini pumpkins. And then again, just showing all the wonderful colors that are produced on our farm. And I think that's a really neat picture just coming of what's being produced right now in Weber County. Now this is a picture of a video actually of our pumpkin harvest. I'll play it here and I'll talk about it. We windrow the pumpkins up in lines. You can see to the left of the tractor we have yet to harvest. To the right of the tractor we have harvested. Everything that's left is pumpkins that don't meet spec. The buyer has particular specs on size, uniformity, green space, stem. So everything that was on that one side we leave. But it's not wasted. We'll go through with a dump truck load and we'll load all those up and feed them to the local cow population. I have some cows and some neighbors, and we feed those leftover products to them. So we're using as much of the product as we can. Now I wanted to spend what remaining time I have left on one of the newest things we're doing on our farm. We've had lots of people come to our farm and would like to buy a tomato. We'd have ladies come into our warehouse and stop all my production of all these boxes being shipped everywhere and say, "Can I buy a tomato?" And it's like, "Take a tomato and leave, please." I don't know what a tomato costs. I really don't. I can sell you a box of tomatoes, a pallet of tomatoes. I can sell you a semi-load of tomatoes. I don't know what this costs. Just take it and leave. And not to be rude, but that is kind of rude. But time is money, right? And it's just hard for me to shut down my production to take care of these users. And I want to be nice to them. And I love people want to have that connection with me and with the farm and where their food comes from, right? We've lost that connection as a society. 100 years ago, you look in your genealogy, I guarantee most of all of you 100 years ago probably had agricultural in your family history. When I talk to people, they'll always say, "Hey, my grandpa was a farmer," or "my uncle," or "my grandma," or "my great-great-grandpa," whatever it is. But we've lost that connection today. As a 38-year-old farmer, it's not as impressive as it was 10 years ago when I was a 28-year-old farmer, but I'm a novelty usually wherever I go. People are like, "Wow, you're really farming? That's what you do? That's your full-time job? You're making a living at that?" And it's sad that that's the truth, right? We don't have that connection anymore. So we created this You Pick garden to where people can come to our farm, and it's all based on the honor system, and they can pick whatever they want, whatever's growing on the farm. We have tomatoes, we have 30 different types of peppers, we have eggplant, we have pickling cucumbers, slicing cucumbers, green beans. Just, my wife's always trying to add things. We've added cut flowers to our garden. And people can come and they just pick whatever they want and take it home. So these are just some of the pictures of the cut flowers that we grow. Mostly we did the flowers because my wife told me I had a really ugly farm. And so we've worked on trying to make it a little more pretty. It's still pretty ugly. But we actually do cut flower bouquets on the weekends, just on the roadside. And it's all just honor system, and I like it that way. I love that the community can come and have an experience. So, and we do have a little market stand where we sell some of the products that we grow elsewhere, the watermelons and cantaloupes and some other items. And you can see the buckets there. People can just pick up their buckets, go pick their items, whatever they want, put it in the bucket, and then leave some money in the cash box or Venmo. And that's just a picture there in the garden of a bucket of tomatoes. And I want to just spend 2 more minutes, I guess, on this is whenever I go over to the U-Pick maybe a couple times a day just to make sure everything's stocked and going, people will recognize me from our social media, and they'll know that I'm the owner of the place. And they'll come up to me, and they'll say, "Hey, in my garden, I'm having this issue with my plants. You know, the leaves are curling, or I got all tomato plants and no tomatoes, or my tomatoes are green and not turning. And what's going on? Like, tell me what am I doing wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like, you're probably just overdoing it. You just water them and forget about them and let nature take care of the rest." So the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of people have lost that connection. They don't know how to grow their food, but they want that connection. I tell people all the time, as a professional farmer, I might have 40 to 50 tries to get it right. And if one year I get it wrong, if I mess up, I shake my head and say, "Okay, well, don't do that again. Try it again a little bit differently." And hopefully, 50 years come by, I hopefully will be an expert at what I'm doing, but I really only have that 40 or 50 tries to get it right. So what I would tell you today is, how does that tie into water and what we're using? I feel like I have a stewardship of the water that has been allocated to me. I use hundreds of acre feet of water. It's my right? I have those water shares to use that water on my farm, But I also need to be smart, and I need to feel like I have a stewardship over that water, and I need to be accountable for that water. And I feel like I am. I'm creating an experience for people to have that is very human, that is very natural, to have a connection with where their food comes from. As Hannah talked about earlier, in this country, we don't grow enough of our own food. We're having to import more food in. In the state of Utah, we're not growing nearly 2% of the food that we consume. And that's a problem in my eyes. It's a lost art, and I don't want it to be a lost art. I want people to have that experience because it truly is wonderful. There's nothing better than eating local food, right? And we all know that whenever we grow something in our garden or have a full ripe cantaloupe or watermelon, there's just nothing better than that experience. And I want all of us to have that experience. So with that, that's what I'm doing on my farm. Do we have any questions? Sweatshirt and the hat, way too much money. Last purchase was $150,000. I'm still working on that one. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so he asked if I noticed any difference in quality in the high tunnels for the tomatoes. I'm a very picky farmer, and I don't eat tomatoes. I don't like tomatoes. I think they're nasty. When you grow up picking tomatoes as a kid and you get the little hornworms we used to have that would hiss at you, it just made for an awful experience, and I don't eat them anymore. But with that being said, yes, there is sometimes some quality issues we have because there is intense heat in those tunnels come June and July. We'll actually put some sunblock onto the plastic to help prevent that heat so we don't get those sun scald issues on the tomatoes. But generally, I have had very little to no complaints from my customers on those high tunnel tomatoes. They're actually, it's like a bidding war because all the local fruit stands want them, and they all know that I'll have early July tomatoes, and I'm one of the only guys around with them. So it gets kind of frustrating.
I'm just going to ask a quick question. Looking at all your pictures and then considering the loss of ag land in Weber County, are people interested? I mean, it seems like you have a pretty successful operation. It seems like a lot of work too.
Yeah.
How interested are your neighbors and fellow producers in doing something like what you're doing versus selling off to a developer?
That's a tough question. I mean, as you dive in deeper into the agriculture, you will find more and more individuals similar ages that I am that are doing similar things and having great success all across the state. I've met and networked with a lot of wonderful young farmers and ranchers over the last 15 years that are having those same success stories. At that same time, yeah, we're losing a lot of our ag land. As a vegetable producer, I can get by on much smaller amounts of land than maybe, like, let's say a dairy would need. So that's beneficial. And I just had to become used to farming small plots, 3, 4, 5 acre plots. They're maybe not the easiest to farm or the quickest to farm, but I just have to get used to farming those. As far as my landowners go, they're all wonderful, and very, very happy with what we're doing with their land. Any other questions? All right.
What's your Instagram?
Ogden Bay Produce. So, yep. Okay, thank you.